So futures has an interesting way of being taxed. There are tax advantages to trading in a futures account that you don't get in a lot of other assets. So that's the number one thing. The second thing about futures is that you can actually leverage some things very strongly.
Hmm.
For example, on oil, if you're going to trade oil and you're doing an exchange traded fund or an oil company, a $1 move is a $1 move. But in futures, the leverage is such that a one penny move in the price of oil is a $10 move in the price of the commodity. So
Hmm.
if you get the direction right, this leverage just adds to it. But of course, when we are trading, we can always be wrong.
Sure.
So we always want to make sure that we have some sort of a technology to protect ourselves. And for trading, we use stops, of course.
Okay.
But it's where to put those stops in. That is the key.
Yeah.
And that's part of the technology that we learn and develop throughout time.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast, the Retire Young podcast. And this is the show we talk a lot about the financial markets, how they work, and different ways us as investors or individuals can enhance or upgrade our lifestyle. And as you know, I bring a lot of guests on the show here, and today I have a very special guest, Kelly Boycks. Kelly, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How you, Josh?
I'm doing really good. It's always great to be back helping our family just make better investing decisions. And as I bring different guests on the show, I always like to ask a couple different things. How did you get started trading? Why did you get started? And what are some of the things that you do? So let's first talk about how you got started in the financial markets. How did that happen?
Well, I never really wanted to do any of this. I just wanted to fly airplanes, and I was a pilot for many years. But then in 2008, 2009, I lost my job. And at the same time, I lost about half of what was in my IRA. And my broker, as you probably know, is probably saying those magical broker words. Don't
Oh,
worry about
yeah.
it. You're in this for the
Long haul. Made you
absolutely.
feel good, though, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely wonderful. And if you lose half of a client's portfolio, but yet the market is not going down any further than that, you feel like you've done a good job. Well, that half you've lost doesn't feel so good if it's your money.
Yeah. And
And
we're
s-
kind of seeing that right now again. We had the drop in February till, was it March or so, end of March.
March 23rd.
But I mean, what's happening with these financial markets now? Um, is this a beginning of a bear market, or is this a continuation? Because markets are going up again.
That's what everybody's asking is if things are so horrible in the world, why are the markets approaching all-time highs? Well, there's a simple answer for that, really. The market is not the economy. And markets tend to operate on their own sets of principles. So if we're making decisions based on what we think is going on in the economy, the market takes advantage of us because
Hmm.
the market has its own governing principles. And so we like to look to the charts for our advice, not to whatever somebody else is saying or what we read in Investors Business Daily. We actually get our information directly off the charts because that's what people are doing and not just what they're saying.
Yeah. So when you mean the charts, is that the actual price action that's really happening, or is that more fundamental?
Well, fundamental is a very good way to evaluate a company's health and project where it should go over the next year, but it tells you relatively little about what it's doing right now. And so we look at the price charts because price tells you what's happening right now. The decisions that the people who have a lot of money, the institutions, are buying and selling, it's what they're doing right now. And that's what we want to take advantage of.
Yeah, you mentioned reading Investors Business Daily, those different information that's out there, and it creates a lot of opinions, does it? And
Absolutely.
and the price chart doesn't lie, does it?
Never. So no matter what you read in whatever publication you're looking at or whatever you hear on TV, not all of that stuff is created in your best interests.
Yeah.
The only thing you can't separate from truth is what people are doing, and that's all in the price charts.
Yeah. Now, do you trade? No, I kind of cut you off earlier with kind of how you got started, but what assets do you trade? I mean, everybody knows the stock market. There's other ones that are out there. What typically do you trade in the markets?
Well, I manage 5 different retirement funds for my family and myself, and so in there we're limited on what we can trade.
Are they
And s-
IRAs then?
They are,
Okay.
and so what we're looking to trade there is exchange traded funds.
Sure.
Exchange traded funds are already diversified, so you don't have to buy a bunch of different stocks to accomplish the same goal. You just buy one thing, and it accomplishes that goal for you. I also trade in a cash account. I trade futures because of the leverage.
Sure.
So if you have a pretty good idea where institutions are buying and selling, then the leverage that adds on by the futures contracts that's just gravy at that point.
Sure.
And if you're going to buy a share of Amazon or 100 shares of Amazon, I mean that's $300,000.
You need a few bucks for that.
Absolutely. But you can get into 100 shares of Amazon for a fraction of that cost by trading options.
Yeah.
A lot of people think options are an asset class of their own, but they're not really. They're a tool of capital efficiency you can use on any asset class. So whatever you can trade more efficiently using options.
Yeah. Now you mentioned earlier when back in 2008, that obviously that was probably during the housing crash or the bubble, that the stock market crash.
Exactly.
But you mentioned that you lost your job, right?
Yep.
Now, is that one of the reasons you went toward the financial markets, because you have these opportunities?
It was double motivation. The first motivation, of course, was losing your job. You need to find another job. I came within about 90 days of losing my house.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed a job.
Yeah.
Nobody was hiring. I couldn't get a job at Home Depot or any place like that, but a brokerage was hiring because they tend to always be hiring
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
Yeah. Go figure.
And the second force was the fact that I just lost about half of my IRA value.
Mm-hmm.
So, being that I needed a job and finding a job that had something to do with the financial industry, I was determined to get this financial thing figured out so I would never be on another 2008 on the wrong side.
Yeah. That's the key, is being proactive rather than reactive.
Well said.
Well said, right? Like, I heard that before, isn't it?
And strategic,
Yes.
investor decisions.
Yeah, there you go. Now, I like that. Now, with the futures market, just explain what that is and why you like to use that in like your cash account, like you're mentioning.
So, futures has an interesting way of being taxed. There are tax advantages to trading in a futures account that you don't get in a lot of other assets. So, that's the number one thing. The second thing about futures is that you can actually leverage some things very strongly.
Hmm.
For example, on oil, if you're going to trade oil and you're doing an exchange traded fund or an oil company, a $1 move is a $1 move. But in futures, the leverage is such that a 1 penny move in the price of oil is a $10 move in the price of the commodity. So
Hmm.
if you get the direction right, this leverage just adds to it. But of course, when we are trading, we can always be wrong.
Sure.
So we always want to make sure that we have some sort of a technology to protect ourselves. And for trading, we use stops, of course.
Okay.
But it's where to put those stops in. That is the key.
Yeah.
And that's part of the technology that we learn and develop throughout time.
Sure. A lot of people want to get trading, started trading investing, but don't really know where to start. And, having, just like any business, they have a business plan. How important is it to have a trading plan with some rules in it?
Well, if you're going to try and get to Pittsburgh and all you know is you're going east from Minneapolis, it's going to be tough to get there. So
Hmm.
the trading plan is actually your roadmap that contains all of the detail, whatever curriculum you use, whatever strategy, even down to the emotional states you are in. That should all be in your trading plan. So when you recognize emotional state that has caused you to make a mistake previously, and you see that emotional state coming up again, you now have a way to improve your conditioning psychologically so you don't keep making those same mistakes emotionally.
Sure. And you can test and see how you've done and see how you can improve as well.
So you can actually test right now and today. You don't have to wait for things to happen in the future. There's something known as back testing.
Sure.
You can go back in time and look at formations on a chart or look at suppositions that you make about market direction without seeing what's happened since then. And then you can roll the chart forward and see how those decisions you would have made have turned out so that you will create better decisions for the future.
You're right. It's all about just taking the emotion out of it too. Because if you have rules within that plan, you just stick to that plan. Kind of like you were a pilot for many years. You probably had a pre-flight. I don't even know what you call it. Pre-flight inspection or something.
Absolutely. And a pre-start checklist, a starting engine checklist, a taxi out checklist. After you get out to the place where you're going to take off, you have a pre-takeoff check, you have a climb check, you have a cruise check. So we have lots and lots of checklists.
Yeah.
And we're required by law to use them. And so even though we may have them memorized, we still go back and we're required by law to read the items word for word.
Hmm.
And that's really the key to building the discipline, is being able to read a pre-designated set of checklists, even in the trading world, word for word, and repeating what they say
Yeah.
until it becomes a habit.
Yeah. You're exactly right. You got to have that habit. What is the theme? It takes 60 days to create a habit, or 90 days to create a habit. And once you've done that, then you have that plan to fall back on and help you as well.
Yes. And the discipline that you have by creating that habit pays dividends to you, because now it's no longer difficult to follow it. It's just now what you do.
Yeah.
Nobody thinks about driving a car anymore, but when you started learning, you had to learn the right way. And if you didn't
Hmm.
learn the right way, you probably don't have driving privileges.
Exactly. Yeah. You've helped, I don't know, probably thousands of people across the country, probably across the world,
Millions.
get started trading and investing. What do you think, if you had to say, what was the most important thing, or the number one thing someone should focus on when first starting out?
Find quality education that is distributed independently of a brokerage, so there is absolutely no conflict of interest in there.
Hmm.
And once you do that, you have to follow that education, follow that discipline. Education has been created by people's experiences through 20, 30 years of market observation.
Hmm.
And so we don't want to be a test pilot. We want to follow it precisely to the letter. We want to have other people make the mistakes so we don't have to. So we can learn from other people's mistakes just by following the curriculum.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like that term or that phrase. Find somebody who knows what they're doing and basically do what they do. Follow them, and obviously you have to put your own risk management parameters in there. But just have somebody
Mhm.
guide you. It's really having mentors as well.
Absolutely. And the in our classes, the biggest mentorship that we have is our own students, and they mentor each other.
Yeah.
Everybody makes separate mistakes, but together, everybody's strengths makes everybody strong.
I
It is.
appreciate you coming on the show here today. We hope to have you on again, and it always helps our listeners with some insight on different, what's happening in these markets, but ways people can get started too. So I want to thank you for coming on the show, and we'll see you soon.
It's a pleasure each and every time, Josh.
All right, thanks.